In a world obsessed with visibility, where every action is broadcast and every thought is shared, we are told to be seen, flaunt our wins, announce our plans, showcase our success. The modern creed worships exposure as power. But what if that's a lie? What if the very act of showing off, of loudly advertising your strength, is the fastest path to losing it? Niccolo Machiavelli, the man often misunderstood as ruthless, was not merely a strategist of power, he was its quiet observer. What he observed over and over was this: those who display too much too soon become targets. The peacock may dazzle, but it is also the first to be hunted. The powerful don't announce their might, they let others feel it, often too late to resist. Machiavelli lived in an era where silence meant survival. In Renaissance Florence, power was not a badge you wore, it was a dagger you concealed. The streets were filled with men who died for boasting, rulers who fell because they couldn't resist showing the world how powerful they were. Machiavelli watched and learned, strength that is flaunted becomes weakness. The strongest man in the room is never the loudest. He's the one watching, calculating, and waiting while others betray themselves with their need to be admired. Yet, today, we do the opposite. We share our goals on social media before taking the first step. We post victories in real time. We reveal strategies, emotions, relationships, all in the name of authenticity. But what we call authenticity, Machiavelli would call strategic suicide. In politics as in life, the loud become predictable, and the predictable become vulnerable. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Those words are not advice, they are a warning. Appearances invite judgment. Exposure invites attack. The more you reveal, the easier it becomes for others to define you, oppose you, or destroy you. In the court of power, mystery is not a flaw, it is armor. Think of the loud entrepreneur who boasts of plans before they've succeeded. Watch how competitors steal those plans or sabotage them. Think of the person in a meeting who dominates every conversation. They may sound strong, but they quietly lose respect. Now picture the one who says little but moves with clarity. Others adjust to their presence. They aren't loud, they are undeniable. Why does this happen? Because speech is commitment, and commitment too early is limitation. When you speak, you declare your position. When you show off, you reveal your weapons. The moment you do, others begin preparing countermeasures. Machiavelli understood that real strength lies not in being praised, but in being underestimated. The fox survives not because it brags about its cleverness, but because it conceals its moves until it's too late. The lion rules not by roaring endlessly, but by the threat of force withheld. Modern culture, however, confuses noise with dominance. We are trained to equate presence with posting, leadership with loudness, power with performance. But here's the truth Machiavelli knew: the more you show, the more you owe. The world begins to expect, and when you fail to meet those expectations, it doesn't forget. Visibility creates a debt that performance must constantly repay. Silence creates space to move freely without owing anyone a show. This isn't just theory, it's psychology. People do not fear what they fully understand. They fear what they can't predict. When your actions are always on display, you become explainable. When your mind is constantly revealed, you become controllable. But when you remain quiet, calculating, and calm, others are forced to guess. In that guessing, they reveal more about themselves than you ever do. Machiavelli would see today's world of performative success and shake his head, not because he was against ambition, but because he knew how easily that ambition could be destroyed by premature exposure. He wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." Understand what that means. He didn't glorify betrayal. He accepted reality. Your past statements become chains. Your public declarations trap you in old versions of yourself. Once the world expects you to be a certain way, deviation looks like weakness. Silence, however, is freedom. It is your right to pivot, to evolve, to adapt without apology. Imagine two warriors. One walks into the arena and proclaims his victory before the fight begins. The crowd cheers. He raises his sword, confident. The other walks in silently, meets his opponent's eyes, says nothing, moves like a shadow. Which one would you fear more? We don't fear the loud, we fear the unknown. That's the lesson. The modern man must remember, when you show off your money, your body, your relationship, your plans, you think you are winning. You think you are intimidating. In truth, you are revealing targets. You're inviting envy, resistance, sabotage, and worse, you're training yourself to need external validation. Machiavelli warned us, it is much safer to be feared than loved. When one of the two must be lacking, fear, true fear, requires distance, mystery, not bravado. The need to be admired is the seed of self-destructs. Once your self-worth is tied to what others see, you become a slave to their perception. You start tailoring your actions to applause. You chase optics, not outcomes, and power slips away. So what's the alternative? Become unreadable, move in silence, execute acts without announcement. Speak only when words add weight. Let results, not declarations, speak. This is not cowardice, it is control. Control over your narrative, control over your opponent's understanding, control over your destiny. Machiavelli didn't advise people to hide out of fear. He advised them to reveal only what served their ends, to understand that influence is not about being seen, it's about being felt, quietly, powerfully, unforgettably. The next time you feel the urge to share your plans, to prove your worth, to flaunt your edge, pause, ask yourself, who benefits from this display, you, or the ones now preparing to use it against you? Remember, the strongest forces in the world are unseen. Gravity, time, pressure, they shape mountains without sound. Be like them, be still, be sharp, be silent. When a man speaks before he moves, he gives his enemies time to prepare. He gives his rivals something to study. He becomes a map, visible, traceable, predictable. Once you are predictable, you are no longer powerful, you are manageable. Machiavelli understood this intimately. His writings weren't just political, they were psychological blueprints. He knew that power begins not with domination, but with control, not of others but of yourself. At the heart of that control lies one critical skill: knowing when to withhold. Why do people show off? Because they want certainty, they want admiration, they want proof that they are worth something. But the Machiavellian mind doesn't seek validation, it seeks leverage. Nothing gives you more leverage than silence, not passive silence, not fearful silence, but chosen silence, controlled, calculated, dangerous. There's a pattern that reveals itself across all levels of power. The higher someone rises, the less they speak. The more weight their words carry, the less often those words are used. When they do speak, people listen not because of what is said, but because of what was held back. The beginner explains everything. The master explains nothing. He doesn't need to. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." The power of the man precedes his position. That power is built through restraint, not just in words, but in behavior, in expression, in emotional reaction. Show-offs are easy to provoke. They rise to bait. They take criticism personally. They react loudly and visibly, giving others exactly what they need to tear them down. But the Machiavellian operator doesn't flinch. He doesn't explain. He doesn't try to win the argument because he's not playing for applause. He's playing for position. Think of the most influential people you know, the ones who truly shape outcomes. Are they the ones shouting the loudest in rooms? Or are they the ones whose silence makes people nervous? This is the power of strategic invisibility. When you're loud, people track you. When you're quiet, people imagine you. And what they imagine is almost always more powerful than what is real. Visibility limits you. Imagination magnifies you. This is why kings once sat behind veils. Why emperors were seen only in ceremony, not because they feared their subjects, but because they understood perception. Once you are common, you are no longer compelling. Modern man violates this principle. Every day, we live in an age where people willingly leak their own weaknesses for attention, where we reward overexposure, where privacy is mistaken for guilt and subtlety is misread as absence. This is why the average man cannot command respect, because he does not understand the value of mystery. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago, men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. In other words, what they see matters more than what you actually do. If you show too much, if you reveal the entire process, the effort, the hesitation, the frustration, you diminish the finished result. The magician who explains his trick loses his audience. Understand this, your achievements do not speak louder. When you broadcast them, they speak softer, because every word you use to justify yourself weakens the impact of what you've done. Every detail you reveal gives your enemies a chance to dissect it. Every boast you make shifts attention from your results to your ego. The disciplined man, the Machiavellian man, doesn't announce his victories. He multiplies them in silence. He lets others interpret, speculate, wonder. The more they wonder, the more they respect. The more they respect, the more power he holds without ever needing to demand it. This isn't about being invisible, it's about being strategic in how you are seen. There are moments to step into the light, but those moments must be chosen, not craved. They must be rare, deliberate, and loaded with intent. A lion doesn't roar all day. He waits, he studies. When the roar comes, it means something. The problem with showing off isn't just that it weakens you, it's that it changes you. Slowly, imperceptibly, you begin to perform instead of act. You begin to chase applause instead of results. You start dressing for reaction instead of purpose. Eventually, you become a caricature of what once made you dangerous. This is the trap of the showman. The moment he becomes addicted to his audience, he becomes their slave. Machiavelli would see this clearly. He would tell you, don't play to the crowd, play above them, let them talk, let them wonder, but never let them fully see. Because when you are seen too clearly, you are no longer respected. You are measured, compared, diminished. Mystique is the shadow of real power. Lose the mystique, and you lose your edge. So how do you build that mystique? You remove the need to prove. You replace display with discipline. You begin to act without explaining. You begin to win without celebrating. You say less but mean more. In doing so, you force the world to come to you not because you shouted, but because they noticed what wasn't being said. That's the quiet war Machiavelli fought. In every sentence he wrote, not for noise, but for control, not for fame, but for influence. In a time when every man is told to speak, when every app, every platform, every post demands attention, those who master silence become gods among noise. The strong man is not the one who demands your attention, he's the one who doesn't need it. The greatest advantage a man can possess in a world addicted to noise is the ability to remain silent and let others expose themselves. In the court of power, every boast, every overshare, every impulsive explanation is a reveal of weakness, a reveal of insecurity, a reveal of lack. Machiavelli knew this. He saw it in the fall of princes, in the betrayal of allies, in the missteps of those who mistook attention for strength. They thought their performance was persuasion. They thought their noise was dominance. But in the end, they were outmaneuvered by men who said less, watch more, and moved only when the moment served them. To understand this, you must first kill the illusion that being understood is always valuable. It's not. In fact, it's often the opposite. The moment people fully understand you is the moment they stop fearing you. They stop respecting you. They start calculating how to surpass you. Machiavelli didn't write for people who wanted to be liked. He wrote for those who wanted to last. To last, you must make yourself ungraspable. He wrote, a prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men, and imitate those who have been supreme. What did those great men have in common? They knew the value of concealment. Caesar, who crossed the Rubicon in silence. Borgia, who made no declarations until his enemies were already cornered. Even Machiavelli himself, who embedded his deepest lessons in allegory, in implication, never in loud instruction. The world has always punished those who reveal too much, but never more so than today. The surveillance isn't just governmental, it's social, it's self-inflicted. People volunteer their secrets, they post their vulnerabilities. They document every win, every loss, every passing emotion, believing that doing so gives them power. It does not. It gives power to others to watch, to compare, to judge, to attack. You cannot control what you've already released. Machiavelli would urge you to build what he called fortresses of the mind, places where your true intentions are known only to you, where your ambitions are not shared but executed, where your process remains invisible until the product is undeniable. Those who build in silence build stronger. There's a reason architects do not show unfinished blueprints to critics. There's a reason generals do not explain their battle plans on the eve of war. There's a reason kings do not ask the crowd for approval before they act, because in power, anticipation is more valuable than exposure. The unknown is leverage. The silent room holds more tension than the loud one. The unsaid shapes behavior more than any speech. The Machiavellian doesn't just control others, he controls what others are allowed to know. This is where the ordinary man fails. He feels tension and rushes to relieve it. He feels doubt and speaks to cover it. He feels triumph and cannot help but scream. In doing so, he teaches the world how to read him. He gives away the code. But the dangerous man, the man who wins, resists that urge. He learns to hold, to sit in discomfort, to resist applause, to speak only when silence no longer serves. This is not the silence of submission, this is the silence of control. There's a difference between being quiet and being unreadable. A man who is merely quiet is passive, but a man who is unreadable is active. He is shaping perception by withholding just enough to make people wonder. That wondering becomes power. People begin to fill in the blanks with their own fears, their own hopes, their own insecurities. You become a mirror, and that mirror distorts their judgment in your favor. Look at any powerful figure in history. They understood this game. Churchill spoke sparingly, but each word landed like thunder. Marcus Aurelius wrote more for himself than for others, his thoughts private, his discipline internal. Even modern CEOs, the ones who truly lead, speak less in meetings than they listen. They are not performers, they are players, strategic players. Machiavelli saw through all illusions. He knew that charisma fades, that applause dies, that fame is a fragile shield, but a strong mind concealed, composed, unreadable is unbreakable. So ask yourself, in a world where everyone is performing, what happens when you don't? What happens when you refuse to explain yourself? When you decline to show your process? When you stop advertising your every move? You gain space. You gain clarity. You gain control. Others begin to talk about you instead of to you. They speculate. They react. They project. And while they do that, you move quietly, with force, without needing permission. That is how empires are built, not with noise, but with moves that cannot be anticipated, not with validation, but with vision that is not diluted by the crowd's gaze. Machiavelli would say, to rule without resistance, you must first remove the need to be seen. Let the crowd chase attention. Let them overexpose. Let them burn themselves in the spotlight. You remain in the shadows not as a coward, but as the architect of a power they will only recognize once it's too late. When they do, they won't know how you got there, because you never showed your hand. You didn't shout. You didn't flex. You didn't compete for their attention. You just moved. There's a law of nature that most men forget. The loudest animal is rarely the deadliest. The wolf does not bark before it bites. The serpent does not announce its strike. The storm does not explain, it arrives suddenly, without apology. Machiavelli understood this truth. In every line he wrote, in every ruler he studied, in every betrayal he chronicled, one theme echoes louder than any declaration. Silence used strategically is more lethal than any speech, and its opposite display, boasting. Theatrical self-exposure is a fatal flaw on any man who seeks to rise. Yet today, we are surrounded by noise, status updates, motivational slogans, behind-the-scenes vlogs, minute-by-minute personal brands. Modern life is a theater of exposure. But what most don't realize is that performance is not power. In fact, it is often the substitute for it. Those who have true power have no need to prove it. The moment you try to prove something, you admit that it's in question. Why is showing off the worst thing you can do? Because it invites reaction. It tells the world where to aim. It exposes your position before you've secured the ground. In Machiavellian terms, this is nothing short of strategic malpractice. He once wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." What does the fool do? He reveals himself. He demands to be seen. He insists on being recognized. In doing so, he hands his enemies the very information they need to destroy. Him, the wise man, however, acts quietly, precisely, and only later, if ever. Does the world learn what he has done? Let's be clear, this is not about being timid. This is not the silence of fear. This is the silence of supremacy, a silence so solid that it cannot be rattled by opinion, trend, or insult. The man who shows off has already lost the game. He has turned inward power into outward validation. He needs others to confirm his worth, his vision, his strength. Once that need exists, it can be manipulated. What's more, showing off puts you on a schedule that does not serve you. You are no longer free to move when it is optimal. You move when others are watching. You're no longer operating in real strategy, you're performing for response. The most dangerous part, you begin to confuse reaction with result. This is how great plans die, not by opposition, but by attention. The idea is shared too early. The strategy is leaked for praise. The goal is announced and judged before it's formed. In Machiavellian politics, that's called premature commitment, and it's a death sentence. You may think that confidence is shown through volume, but Machiavelli would disagree. True confidence is silent. It moves with such precision that it doesn't ask for trust, it demands respect. Consider how this applies to leadership. The loud leader, the one who speaks in excess, who justifies every move, who responds to every criticism, appears accessible but not powerful. The quiet leader, the one who listens more than he talks, who withholds more than he shares, commands a different kind of authority. His words weigh more because he speaks less. That's not coincidence, that's design. Silence increases perceived value. Every unnecessary word dilutes that value. The man who constantly explains himself lowers his price. The man who withholds, who lets mystery do the talking, raises it. The same applies in negotiation. The first person to speak always loses ground. The more you reveal, the more you concede. But if you can sit in the tension, if you can hold the silence, others will reveal themselves. They will fill the space. They will show you their weaknesses while guessing at yours. Machiavelli didn't just teach politics, he taught human nature. He knew that people are uncomfortable with what they don't understand. That discomfort leads them to speak, to react, to show their hand. All you need to do is remain still, and they will destroy themselves in the effort to decode you. So ask yourself, when you post your goals, when you brag about your moves, when you reveal your relationships, your income, your plans, who are you doing it for? Is it for progress or for praise? Is it for control or for comfort? The man who needs to be seen will always be controlled by the gaze of others. But the man who sees everything while revealing nothing, he becomes untouchable. This is the reason Machiavellian silence is so rare, because it demands discipline. It demands that you become immune to the need for reaction, that you find power not in being known, but in being unknowable. The unknown is feared. The predictable is managed. Choose who you want to be. Power is not just what you do, it's what you allow others to think you might do. If they don't know what that is, if they can't predict, prepare, or explain you, they will hesitate. That hesitation is the space in which you win. It's not the showman who becomes king, it's the shadow figure, the one who appears only when the move is already made, the one who is 10 steps ahead but says nothing until it's over. Machiavelli would not tell you to be invisible. He would tell you to be deliberate, to make them think you're playing checkers. When you're playing chess, to smile while holding a blade, to nod while keeping score, and to speak only when your silence has finished its work. This is the power of not showing off. This is the power of presence without performance. Say nothing, watch everything, and move only when it serves the win. If there is one thread that runs through every fall from power, every collapse of influence, every dethroned king and defeated general, it is this: they were seen too clearly, too early by too many. Machiavelli understood that power, like gold, loses value when too much is in circulation. The man who constantly puts himself on display, who broadcasts every move, every ambition, every achievement, floods the market with himself. Once you are everywhere, you are no longer valuable. You are common. You are background noise. You cannot be both revered and familiar. Machiavelli warned that rulers must learn how not to be good, but he also meant something subtler: how not to be accessible. The sovereign must be known by his results, not by his explanations. He must be felt, not followed. His presence must weigh on the room even when he's absent. That presence cannot be built by speaking louder, it is built by speaking less, by making every appearance count. The moment you begin chasing visibility, you surrender the one thing that cannot be replaced, mystique. Mystique is not the product of hiding, it is the product of restraint, of discipline, of showing only what serves your objective and nothing more. It is power preserved through precision. Look at the way great actors use silence on stage. A glance, a pause, a breath held too long, it says more than a monologue ever could. The same is true in life. The person who speaks after a silence controls the tempo. The one who listens longer understands deeper, and the one who holds back gains leverage while others deplete theirs. This is not a tactic, it's a worldview. In Machiavelli's world, every interaction is a contest of control. In that contest, noise is a liability, emotion is a liability. The desire to be admired is the worst liability of all, because once you require praise, you become addicted to performance. Performance is not power, it is a distraction from it. The man who rises in silence is not just more effective, he is more dangerous, because nobody sees him coming. He is the silent architect, the one who builds without announcing, the one who studies his enemies while they advertise their strategies, the one who waits until every piece is in place, then strikes with such precision that people call it genius. But it was never genius, it was patience, silence, control. That kind of control terrifies people, because they can't prepare for what they can't predict. They can't resist what they can't see. They can't retaliate against a force they don't fully understand. This is the psychology of fear, and Machiavelli understood it with brutal clarity. He wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved. Love is given, fear is crafted. One of its key ingredients is uncertainty. When people don't know what you'll do next, they brace themselves. When they're unsure how you think, they don't challenge you. When they feel something powerful behind your silence, they step back. They respect a distance they cannot cross." That's the paradox of modern communication. The more we share, the less we are respected. Because sharing feels good. It feels intimate. It feels honest. But power is not about feeling good, it's about lasting. To last, you must train yourself to hold when others release, to conceal when others confess, to act when others announce, and most importantly, to understand that not every truth deserves an audience. There's a difference between transparency and weakness. Machiavelli would say, show only what is useful, disclose only what builds your position, and never confuse openness with strength. While you're broadcasting your plans, someone else is watching, quietly calculating how to use your truth against you. They will not announce themselves. They will not argue. They will wait. They will smile. When your guard is down, when you're busy collecting likes, they will move. That is the cold beauty of real power. It is never loud. It is never rushed. It is never needy. So you must ask yourself, do you want recognition or do you want results? Because you can rarely have both. The man who is recognized too early becomes a symbol, and symbols are targets. The man who builds too loudly invites sabotage. The man who needs applause will compromise his tactics to keep it. But the man who is content to go unseen, unpraised, unnoticed, he becomes something else entirely. He becomes a shadow that moves behind the headlines, a force that does not depend on exposure to dominate. Machiavelli did not crave fame. He understood it. He manipulated it. But he never believed in it as a goal, because he knew fame is a trap. It forces you to maintain a version of yourself that others admire, even if it costs you everything that made you powerful in the first place. The world will tell you to be visible, to be loud, to be undeniable. But the master knows, the more you are seen, the more you are scrutinized. And the more you are scrutinized, the easier it is to be dismantled. So be careful what you reveal. Be careful what you show off. The man who is addicted to display may win the crowd, but he will never control the game. Machiavelli never wrote for the crowd, he wrote for the player. The ruler, the quiet strategist who knows the deepest truth. Of all, power is not what people see. Power is what people can't see. What makes a man powerful is not how loudly he speaks, but how carefully he listens. Not how much he reveals, but how much he withholds. Not the applause he gathers, but the moves he makes when no one is watching. Machiavelli saw it in courts and councils, on battlefields and in backrooms. The ones who lasted, the ones who ruled, were not the ones who performed, they were the ones who planned in silence, in shadows, without needing recognition to validate their position. That is the final warning he offers to anyone who wishes to win. Showing off is not just a mistake. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of how power operates. The crowd cheers for the man who shines, but the one who endures, the one who truly holds influence, is the man who understands that every moment of visibility comes at a price. What is that price? Exposure, vulnerability, predictability. For the Machiavellian mind, those are debts you never take on unless the payoff is guaranteed. Today, most people live in the open. They broadcast every emotion, every opinion, every ambition. But exposure is not strength, it is surrender. You show them your goals, they'll mock them. FSET system, you show them your process, they'll steal it. You show them your wealth, they'll scheme against it. Every time you reveal something, no matter how small, you invite judgment, envy, resistance. But when you stay quiet, when you stay unreadable, you hold the advantage, because no one can attack what they cannot define. No one can block a move they don't see coming. No one can destroy what is hidden. That is not weakness, that is design. The world tells you to be transparent. Machiavelli tells you to be selective. The world tells you to be authentic. Machiavelli tells you to be strategic. The world tells you to be admired. Machiavelli tells you to be feared when necessary, and always respected. That respect is not earned through grand displays or emotional speeches. It is earned through consistency, restraint, and force used only when it serves a purpose. Invisibility is not your enemy, indifference is. No one ignores what they don't understand, but they often dismiss what is too familiar. So let them wonder, let them guess, let them think they know you while you quietly redefine who you are, where you're going, and what you'll become. Machiavelli taught that the prince must sometimes appear virtuous without being so. Perception is a tool, not a mirror. You do not owe the world a full version of yourself. You owe the world results, and results do not need decoration. They do not need explanation. They speak louder than your mouth ever could. This is the lesson for those who wanted to build something lasting. Move in silence, build in silence, win. In silence, when you speak, let it be rare. Let it be intentional. Let it carry the weight of all you chose not to say. That's what gives a voice power, not its volume, but its scarcity. The man who shows off today may impress a room. The man who stays silent will shape the world. Understand this: legacy is not created by noise, it is created by motion, quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. The kings of history were not crowned by the crowd, they were crowned by their ability to rule without needing to be seen, to make decisions that shaped futures without ever explaining themselves to those who would not understand. You don't need to be famous, you don't need to be followed, you don't need to be praised. You need to be effective. Effectiveness begins where the need for attention ends. So walk away from the spotlight. Withdraw your need to prove. Master your tongue. Temper your pride. And focus your mind on what matters, not the image, not the impression, but the impact. When your silence is louder than their noise, you've won. When your actions echo through rooms you never entered, you've won. When they realize they've been playing your game without ever hearing your rules, you've won. That's the final rule. That's the quiet victory. That's what Machiavelli tried to tell you before the noise drowned him out. If you've listened this far, it means something in you is already shifting. A part of you is tired of the noise, tired of explaining, tired of needing permission to be powerful. Now, something deeper is waking up. You've realized that being admired means nothing if it requires you to become predictable. True respect begins when you no longer negotiate your presence to fit their expectations. So now, I ask you, are you ready to be doubted, misunderstood, even resented, because you chose strategy over spectacle? Are you willing to walk the silent path, knowing it's colder, lonelier, but far more dangerous? If this message spoke to you, if something in you clicked, write in the comments, *I move in silence*. Let's see how many of you are done performing. How many of you are ready to stop showing off and start winning? Don't stop here. Watch the next video. It's not just content, it's preparation. Preparation for a world that doesn't reward the loud, but the lethal. I'll see you there.